Hi, I'm Daryl Berling from Master New Testament Greek, and each week I help people like you master the Greek of the New Testament. If that sounds like you, then go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and when you hit the button there, hit the notify bell to be notified when new videos come out as well. So you're browsing your professor's bookshelf, or perhaps you're in a seminary bookstore and you see two Greek grammars like these ones, and you wonder why. Why is one of these so big and the other one so small? Which one should I buy? They have the same target audience. They have the same usage expectations. They're going to be used in a classroom. They have much the same content in them, but they have very different levels of detail. Which one should you buy? Depends really on what you're looking for in a Greek grammar. Let's explain by simply looking at what the authors are trying to do in each of these works, and then we'll evaluate each grammar, and I'll give you my thoughts on each of these at the end. First, let's look at Dan Wallace's Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics. Now, this is widely used, perhaps the most exhaustive intermediate Greek grammar written in the last 40 years. It actually started as teaching notes that he was using in his classroom, and they grew over 6 different non-printed editions into this edition. So this is actually the first printed edition, but it's actually the 6th edition. He mentions that in his introduction as well. Now, Wallace is concerned about exegesis. That means he's focused on how words and syntactical constructions are used so that those who are studying the Bible in the original languages are able to determine the meaning of the text. Now, he says in his introduction, much exegesis is not properly based on syntax. Too many works on syntax show little concern for exegesis. In other words, there are some grammars that focus on the syntax and some that focus on exegesis, but Wallace has identified that there is a need to provide a strong connection between these two so that you can see how the syntax connected to the process of exegesis. He continues, the result of this dichotomy is that intermediate students do not see the relevance of syntax for exegesis, and exegetes often misuse syntax in their exegesis. This work, this grammar, attempts to offer an initial corrective to this situation by properly grounding the exegesis in the idioms of the language and by orienting the syntax to its exegetical value. In a nutshell, Wallace wants to show you how syntax should be used in exegesis. The assumption here is that since God inspired the Bible and Jesus himself placed emphasis on every jot and tittle being inspired and part of God's word, that there is significance in every construction. And so Wallace not only provides an overview of the syntax, he also provides many notes that are helpful in the process of exegesis. Now, some people have criticized Wallace's work on the basis that it seems to multiply syntactical categories. Now, this is, to some extent a valid critique. The problem with overloading the number of categories is that it can be demoralizing for the exegete. It leads to death by 1,000 categories. There are so many categories, and it's hard to know how a student of New Testament Greek can get their head around them all, let alone remember them all. And this is really where this other type of grammar begins to look really attractive. This is an intermediate Greek grammar, a syntax for students of the New Testament by David Mathewson and Elodie Ballantyne Emig. The authors explain their approach in the introduction and take issue with grammars which multiply categories. They argue that the exegetical approach is not how we normally understand language. They cite the late New Testament scholar Rodney Decker, who argues against an over-analysis of grammar to find nuggets that support an emphasis that they want to make in the text, even in some commentaries that attempt to focus only on the Greek text. We do not understand our own language in this way, even though a grammarian can dissect such texts and assign appropriate taxonomical labels to the individual elements. Now, this doesn't mean that there is no value in considering different uses of the genitive in a particular verse. However, instead, it's just making the point that we don't dissect our own language in this way, so why would we do it with the New Testament? Further, they argue that the grammatical categories are in fact a function of the context itself, and not something that exists simply because of the form of the words under consideration. Now, the danger in overanalyzing the text like this, they say, is that it attributes more to the language than is found in the context. So, this book seeks to minimize the number of grammatical categories in order to keep the language simple and to bring out the meaning found in the context, how words work together as a unit, rather than how a particular unit might work on its own. Now, this has the benefit of being much easier to read, though if you're doing exegesis, the grammar itself is not going to give you what you might like to help you to really drill into the meaning of the text and the exegetical arguments in commentaries. So, that brings us to the all-important question. Which one should you choose? Which one of these is right for you? Now, honestly, I'm not sure that this is a black and white question. Here's my thinking. The exegetically oriented grammar, this one here, is going to be more help for somebody who is interested in exegesis. In other words, if you don't read the language, this will be a helpful tool to give you hints and ideas for how the text might be working. However, if you're reading the text fluently, learning the words and reading without helps, then you'll enjoy a minimalist grammar because it simplifies the syntax and then gets out of the way so that you're free to come to conclusions based on your reading, rather than by trying to drill into particular taxonomical categories. So if you're reading the text fluently, you'll see and understand the text more clearly simply because you're following the arguments and the thoughts of the author as he wrote them in his own language. And so you are much more embedded in the elements that the author is using to make his arguments. So, all of this means that instead of advising you to take one over the other, I'm going to say that both of these are really helpful. I really like the minimalist approach because it's the best way to get underway reading. And I really like Mathewson and Emig because it keeps concepts simple and allows you to read with better comprehension. However, I also really value Wallace because it helps you to get a more detailed understanding of how those elements of the text can work together in certain passages, particularly to really give you the meaning. So I recommend really that you get both. If you're learning to read the New Testament in Greek, then Mathewson and Emig will give you all that you need to understand that syntax. But if you're wanting to dig a little deeper or you're doing exegesis, then Wallace is going to be where you want to go to get the help you need to work through some of those more detailed aspects of the language. But what do you think? If you've spent time in one of these grammars, then let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you found this video helpful, then hit the subscribe button below and then hit the notify bell to be notified when new videos come out. And I also encourage you to check out the Master New Testament Greek website at masterntgreek.com and go to masterntgreek.com/roadmap and download your free roadmap to learning to read the New Testament fluently in the original language. With that, keep making small, regular steps toward mastery of the language, and I'll see you in the next video.